Blythe. Mark, you want to just, so Mark is from University of Northumbria, Newcastle. Youn-kyung Lim, so Yun is from KAIST. Daniela Rosner, our pinch hitter, who joined us this morning from the University of Washington. Will Odom, Fraser University. And Haakon Faste has actually been joining us, which is great. His flight was delayed. Luckily, he had internet on his flight, and so he sent us a video from 60,000, whatever, in the air. So hats off to Haakon for that. So what we want to talk about today is this idea of speculative reasoning, and it's a term, I guess, that in some ways may be an introduction to some of you, but in some ways it's been very, very familiar to you, particularly as designers and those involved in design. In large part because design is inherently speculative. Speculative meaning is about the future, and we really think about what could exist. And really the kind of intent of the panel in part is to look at how maybe we can leverage this idea, this kind of fundamental notion of speculative reasoning, and really leverage it sort of in the context, a lot of people talk about design research and research for design, but how we can take this approach and really put it at the basis of our inquiry. And as you'll see, it actually resonates very much with just the general notion of inquiry and research that we do. But let me just kind of go through and just very briefly just show you how speculative reasoning is something that's so fundamental to us as designers. This is an example here of a grocery store, and you think about what we do today and how we shop, and how food is brought to our table, it's produced somewhere, it's harvested, it's grown, distributed through stores, we collect it, we pay for it, we bring it home, we prepare. And of course, this is an example from Phil's Design Trove. It's called Biosphere Farm. And they looked at the brief of what would the kitchen of the future be in 2020. And so the Biosphere Farm is at the top, you have herbs and vegetables, and then the nutrients from the water that flows down. You can't really see it because it's very dark, but there's actually an aquarium at the bottom where there's fish. And so the nutrients flow down, they feed the fish, the waste from the fish gets recycled back up, and you're actually harvesting there now and in the future. Not only do you not have to distribute the food, you actually grow and produce the food in the same place in which you cook it. And this is a classic design notion. How might we improve, how might we create something that's preferred in the future? And how do we go about that? I'll give you another example. This is sort of looking back and how we look forward. So this is an example of the Night Raiders. This is from 1994. And you're considering what's happened newspaper.
For more than 500 years, ink printed on paper has been the best medium for delivering written information. But as the world becomes increasingly digital, all that is changing. Here at the Night Raider Information Design Lab in Boulder, Colorado, a team of journalists, designers, technologists, and researchers is putting together the tools that will take today's newspaper into the electronic age.
We will have the interactive graphic now. So when you click on graphic, it'll land you on the front page. But if you click on the story.
Roger Filler established the lab for Night Raider in the fall of 1992. Today, he serves as its director.
Our role is to investigate the opportunities that may be there for newspaper companies over the next few years, and to also try to develop a long-range vision of where the newspaper industry is headed over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
An important part of this evolution is the emergence of the electronic tablet. This device is under development at consumer electronics companies around the world. Tablets will be a whole new class of computer. They'll weigh under 2 pounds. They'll be totally portable. They'll have a clarity screen display comparable to ink on paper. They'll be able to blend text, video, audio, and graphics together. And they'll be part of our daily lives around the turn of the century.
Wow. So this is a good example of the kind of featuring in design. In large part, they got it right. And if you think that one of the things, the point is how they did this, and you could see they had a group of people essentially around the table really an emphasis on an analytical emphasis over empirical reasoning, trying to actually understand drawn past work, drawn past exemplar, and through a level of kind of analytical engagement, theorize about what might come, and work from there and embed that, embody that in design practice. And so the very notion of kind of analytical reasoning or speculative reasoning is, as I said, very much part of what we understand as design. We all understand this through design scenarios, conceptual prototyping, featuring, technology road mapping, and so on and so on. And the things that we come to value with this idea of featuring, at least in most of our practices, is the degree to which it's predictive. Even then, I just showed you a video to show how predictive it was. It tends to be technology-driven. We tend to look at the technology and say, well, what is that going to bring us in the future? And we really try to look at existing trends to see what the near-future probability of that is. And as designers, we tend to want to optimize and want to make that actually come to reality. So this is a form of speculative reasoning. This is something that, again, is so fundamental what we do. But I think much what we're going to argue this afternoon is that the emphasis here is more on the reasoning, the analytical reasoning, as opposed to the speculative. And we see that it has limits. And the argument is to bring this analytical reasoning really very much to the forefront of the way in which we do research and push it further. So I'm going to show you, this is a short video by Anthony Dunn and Dunn and Ravi that just recently came up with both Speculate Everything, but does a nice job of actually articulating where we might go.
Especially in design, when we think of the future, we think very much of predicting the future and forecasting it and trying to absolutely figure out what is going to happen. It's very much about trying to identify probable futures. That's what we're trained to do as designers. Our education, our professionalism, our design methods, our awards are all geared towards doing this, whether it's new needs we might have in a few years or new markets. Once you move away from that, there's a much more interesting space. There's the space of, let's see my computer, potential futures. And this is the space of scenario building. For example, in the 70s, the oil company Dutch Shell used to generate alternative future world visions, not to try and predict the world that was going to take shape, but to make sure that if one of, say, 5 different worlds were to take shape, their company could continue to thrive in those worlds. So it would take into consideration massive economic shifts, wars, famines, things like that. So it's still very much dealing with modeling reality, but a number of different realities rather than one. I guess the space I'm interested in is the one about possible futures, which is where a lot of science fiction happens. It's much more about imagining freely how the world can be different, how everyday life can be different. And there's a kind of limits, because there isn't really this artificial line between the possible and whatever's beyond it. I sort of think of that as the space of the fantastic, of goblins, fairies, things like that. And the thing that distinguishes it for me is scientific realism. That beyond that line, there's a world that scientifically just doesn't make sense.
So I know the graphic was hard to see, so here's a recreation of it. This is actually based on Dunn and Ravi's interpretation of Stuart Candy, who's a futurist, who talks again. You can see that moving from the present, that much of what I was showing you before in those earlier slides is really trying to understand, speculate on the probable. But really the argument is to move from the probable to potential, even the possible. And Anthony Dunn says really the limits you hit upon this is in some respects a scientific limitation. And even then that could be contested whether that really is the limit of which we speculate. Science fiction and so on, we challenge some of that. But nevertheless, this is something that we actually really engage in. We actually do try to find that space in which we inquire and find out what those limits are. And we really should be pushing those as far as we possibly can. So as I pointed out earlier, the kind of understanding of speculative reason that we have tends to be about probable futures. And if we really want to move out to this realm of the potential and the possible futures, then this may be widening the breadth of methods, widening the breadth of commitments, widening our understanding of how we might approach and bring speculative reasoning into our research. So, I actually really can't see it, it's completely dark, but it's grayed out. The move from predictive, as I showed you before, as now being fictive. This notion of really utilizing fiction and expanding the understanding of the possible worlds that might be out there, to moving from what was technology-driven to being values-driven. That as we shape the future, we might understand and actually play with, and actually even challenge and contest some of the human values that we hold very dearly right now. Moving away from near-future probability towards speculatively preferable. What is preferable by whom, and how far do we speculate? So these are some things we're going to talk about in the panel, is how do we move beyond probable? How do we take analytical reasoning very much into the core of our research, and how do we move beyond probable? And so to summarize, speculative reasoning and design research is speculative, value-driven, and about the possible and preferable. So let me give you an example from our own work. This is something in the everyday design studio that we've been working on. This is what we call table non-table. It's a stack of paper, a thousand sheets of paper. It sits on an aluminum chassis with a, you can see in the center, there's an aluminum post that goes through, and this paper is just stacked on top. It's plugged into the wall. It doesn't do it. What it does is it moves on occasion, maybe 2 times a day, or maybe 5 or 10 seconds, maybe 3 times a week, maybe 9 times a month. It's random, and has these slight movements. So what is the point of this? Well, really for us, this is an approach to research we call a concept artifact. This really is taken from Eric Salter and Yuka Bieber. And the idea that you simultaneously crack and conceptualize certain ideas together and explore what you might do with those. And so we really wanted to explore the notion of what it is to be lived with and how things that we make, digital interaction design artifacts, can enjoy or become part of practices. And there's not much that we can reason on based on empirical research, but we need to speculate and analytically understand how we might craft such a thing. And so we might have, this could be considered a material imagining of an artifact that balances certain tensions, in our case, to sort of defamiliarize the alien and the familiar. Or material imagining that balances the idea of being passive enough that you can live with it, but active enough that you don't forget it. So it's not enough just to speculate and even to make it in the studio, but of course it has to take it out into the wild. It has to exist. And within the speculative reasoning, it doesn't mean that you're detached from the rest of the world. It has an existence within our world. And so we deploy these into various households. What they might do or what's to be done with it, we don't know. That's part of that reasoning. It's part of understanding what the probabilities might be, the possibilities, and the potentials. So this may be beyond human, in fact, like a capture that what to do with it. But was able to take the paper and play with it somewhat. In fact, in that many ways, actually inspired some of the owners to actually take it apart, and they've done various things-based snowflakes with it, draw on it, and do all kinds of things. But really what it is a speculation of what might be an encounter. If we shape and craft something, and what might be the encounter. And try to understand that. So, in putting this panel together, we put together a series of questions that I've asked each of the panelists. And they're going to try to address these questions. So how do you describe speculative reasoning and design? What are examples of speculative reasoning and design from your own work and others? And what contributions can speculative reasoning and design make to HCI? So with that, I'm going to now hand the floor over to Mark Blythe.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I'm going to start off by talking about Mark Weiser, who is another interesting example of very prescient speculative reasoning. Mark came up with the term ubiquitous computing and described in a seminal article, The Computer in the 21st Century, a lot of the technologies that we now live with and take for granted. And he did that through this series of scenarios around this user called Sal. And I'm just going to give you a little example of that. So Sal wakes up and she smells the coffee, and the machine asks her quietly if she wants coffee. She says yes or no. This is all that the machine understands. And then she looks out of the windows. I'm just going to read this because it's really interesting. Sunlight and defence are visible through one, but through others she sees electronic trails that have been kept for her of neighbours coming and going during the early morning. Privacy conventions and practical data rates prevent displaying video footage, but time markers and electronic tracks on the neighbourhood map let Sal feel cosy in her street. So So this is a world where, you know, there are data trails, you're leaving data traces wherever you're going, but there are conventions which exist which make this, you know, something that's not necessarily something to worry about. There are conventions which make it okay. So these kinds of scenarios in ubiquitous computing have always been very influential, where in some senses we're living in the world that these scenarios described. And a few years ago, Genevieve Bell and Paul Durish wrote a paper comparing these kinds of ubiquitous computing scenarios to science fiction. And the paper was called Resistance is Futile. And I was trying to find that in my jet-lagged tags yesterday. I put into Google, research is futile. That's like a Freudian thing. But they described these 5 shows that they grew up watching. One was Star Trek, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The other was Doctor Who, which you may know. And then Blade 7, which you probably don't know if you're not from England. But in Star Trek, the kind of future that's imagined is very utopian. There's a federation that exists where, you know, planets coexist harmoniously. The problems on Earth have been solved. You've got an interracial crew. There are no money problems. It's a very utopian, optimistic vision. And stereotypically, you know, English, the Doctor Who vision is essay. So the TARDIS basically doesn't work. It looks like that police box there because the chameleon circuit, which is supposed to make it blend in when it lands somewhere, doesn't work. And in Blade 7, it's basically a poor man's Star Trek. It's basically the same show with 7 people in a spaceship having, you know, various encounters and adventures. But the Federation that they know is pursuing them. So this is a dystopian future. It's very unique and very depressing, and everything's awful, and it's total state surveillance. And, you know, none of this American optimism, thank you very much. Precious, very bleak and awful future is what we've got. And what Bell and Durish point out as they talk about these different shows is that they all foreground the social and political and cultural context, whatever that might be. So whether it's a utopian vision or a dystopian one, it's there. And they say that this is something that's missing when you have a typical Unicon scenario. It's a pretty faceless user in a pretty, you know, banal kind of setting. But that isn't to say that there's no social context imagined. There is. It's just downplayed. And they want to make this distinction here between research that foregrounds these social and cultural contexts and these kinds of political kinds of concerns, and those that downplay it and suppress it. So I thought it would be quite interesting to take some of those wiser salve scenarios and rewrite them in the style of science fiction. So wiser took the term, you know, ubiquitous computing from a Philip K. Dick novel called Ubik. And Ubik in this novel is a kind of aerosol spray, which is totally multifunctional. It's described in very strange ways as, you know, doing all kinds of contradictory things. And he, you know, used that word to talk about the all-pervading computing environment that we now live in. But I took these characters in this world, which in Philip K. Dick is very dystopian, and put the same technologies that Weiser was talking about into this world. And it comes out very differently. So Philip K. Dick always begins with a blue-collar worker who hates his job, who's living in a world that he doesn't really understand, and Ubik starts off like that as well. So taking that Sal scenario where, you know, she wakes up and gets coffee, so does Joey Chip here, but he has a hangover. And he says, why didn't you wake me up like I asked? And the alarm clock replies, the cost of a wake-up call is 5 cents. And he says, I told you I didn't have any change anyway, it's gratuity, it's a tip, I don't have to do it. And the alarm clock argues and says, well, I think otherwise. And then he says, okay, just give me a coffee, 50 cents please, and he just has the money. And, you know, this kind of foregrounds something that is very often left out of all of our scenarios, which is money. How do we pay for this? What happens if you can't pay for this? Who does this exclude as well as include? So this kind of incorporation of science fiction and this kind of broad vocabulary of scenario development is something which science fiction authors themselves have been coming along to design conferences and urging us to do. So Bruce Sterling is mainly best known for the difference engine which he wrote with William Gibson. Coined the term design fiction in his 2005 book, Shaping Things. And he said, well, I've been writing design fiction for years. And the way that he defined it in those early years was that it just makes more sense on the page than science fiction does. And this is taken up by Julian Blythe, and he talked about the idea of a diegetic prototype, a prop from a film, being interesting not just because it shows you some kind of technology, but because it drives the story. Yeah? So he says, like, with Minority Report, the interesting about the technology is not just how it works, or what the interaction is, but how does this thing work in the context, what happens in the story with people. And so they took this on and came up with this more formal definition of design fiction as the deliberate use of diegetic prototypes to suspend disbelief about change. So here's some examples. This one Sterling uses a bioprinted organ. This is one of Tony Dunn's and Kenny Ray's students, I think. He's talking about what will the meat tomorrow look like if we can grow meat, then how would we design that to look appetizing? And corporations are starting to use this kind of technique as well. So you're getting people like Microsoft showing design fictions of their smartphone in the future, and the Google Glass type fictions, how we're going to use these. And then you kind of get into some difficult water in some ways, and people like Eugene Morozov have started to critique this kind of sometimes utopian thinking, particularly within the context of corporate development. So he's written a book called Click Here to Save Everything, and talks about solutions, which is term he borrows from architecture. And it's kind of defined as solving problems that don't really exist, or giving quick technological fixes for complex social and political problems, right? So he talks about the way that self-monitoring technology, self-tracking technology, consistently focuses in on the individual. It's the individual person's problem. They have to deal with it individually. If we're going to tackle the obesity epidemic, then we need to kind of get people looking at how many steps they're taking in a day. And he says that this kind of focus, first of all, implies there's a technology quick fix for everything, that there's a technological silver bullet for everything, and there isn't. And it also kind of takes the pressure off, other kinds of interventions. Well, shouldn't we be kind of regulating, soft drinks in schools or questions like that, right? And his favourite example is bin can. So bin can is a mobile phone bin lid. And the idea is that when the lid closes, it takes a photograph of the contents of the bin and sends that image to Facebook so your friends can see if you're recycling or not. And the idea was like maybe if there was kind of social pressure going on, then people would be more inclined to recycle. So Morozov gets very irate about this, and talks about it as an example about the geeks think the internet is going to save us all. But here I can't part company with him because I think BinCam is a very interesting research prototype. And the fact that it makes Morozov so angry is part of what makes it so interesting. And it sparked a huge outcry in the press in Britain, and right-wing tabloid newspapers said, "Oh, the government can spy on your bin now." And I think and the responses of the readers were also very interesting, and showed what a kind of complex issue that it is, how very deeply held beliefs come into play, and people who are climate change deniers and people like that saying, you can pull the Coke can that I need to recycle from my cold dead hand. And all that stuff is very interesting and wouldn't have been discussed, I don't think, without that. So I think it's more interesting rather than less because it's flawed in that way, because it's solutionist in that way, to the extent that it is. So it kind of begs the question, well, what's the point of a prototype? Why do we make things? Why do we do these designs? Why do we put these, new, strange things into people's hands? What's the point of them all? And this is something that we're kind of still, I think, as a community, deciding. But it certainly isn't always the case that we're trying to kind of test out some new product, that we're trying to test out some new potential market. I think if BinCam had been made by Facebook, then that would be a very different kind of question. If they were kind of putting that out as some sort of solution, that would be very disturbing. But what we're trying to do, I think, when we do these kinds of speculative designs, is to generate knowledge, not necessarily solutions, right? And Bill Gaver in a paper a couple of years ago pointed out that, anyway, what kind of knowledge is it? Because it's not repeatable, it's not generalizable, right? So, one of the things I've used design fiction for is to try and frame answers to those kinds of questions. It's a book by a science fiction writer called Stanislav Lem called Imaginary Magnitude, where he kind of writes conference proceedings for a conference of the future, and has abstracts from that conference and presentations from it. And it's kind of a nice way to kind of frame a concept design and think, well, shall I make it in this way or not? So for various projects, before we started actually making things, written up what the abstract for the paper might look like and what the point of it might be. So I think to go back to the kind of problem of solutionism, I think design fiction can be used to help address that charge, but I don't think it's one that we should be that frightened of, really. And I think, the term solutionism is one that we kind of in a way need to hold our hands up to. It's like, clearly we are not going to solve the problems of the environment with some technology. And clearly there are dangers when we start handing over too much power to Silicon Valley. But yet we are engaged in design practices, we do want to kind of explore these new possibilities and so on. And so I think, okay, let's not be too afraid of that term. And it's kind of like, it reminds me of when the Impressionists, the French painters, were first called Impressionists. This was an insult. This was a term of abuse. But it kind of stuck because it's an impressionist kind of practice. So maybe what we're doing is a solutionist kind of practice. And I think that's probably why design fiction is becoming more popular and why more and more people are kind of engaged in it. Because unlike a scenario and unlike a persona, it insists on its fictional status and then can help bring in those other social and cultural contexts. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mark. While you're setting up, are there any questions for Mark? Yes, James.
So, how does that solutionist view or even speculative design fit with critical? And then the second question with that, I've noticed some people become more from a critical theory point of view will say, oh, why are we building this stuff for people that are sustainable, like trash fitness models? That's not going to work. Yet a part of me feels like speculative design should support the idea of exploring all the possible futures and seeing what happens and see if it works rather than kill it before you do it. So I'm kind of curious how this fits.
Yeah, I think they can fit very well. Phoebe Singers and her colleagues had a paper at KAIST years ago called Fit for Life. Do you see that? Fit for Life it was called. I can't quite remember the name of all the authors. But it was this paper which was describing a system that you would wear if you wanted to lose weight. And it was like a critical design essentially. And the idea was that it would be able to tell if you were about to eat a cream cake, and it would say, "Don't eat the cream cake, no, remember your sister's wedding," or whatever, And she really, the authors of that paper were saying, okay, well, what happens if we really take seriously all of these self-monitoring technologies, if we take seriously that kind of solutionist approach? So I think there's the kind of things that Morozov is worried about. Critical design is very good at expressing. You can kind of encapsulate what those concerns are through that kind of work. So I think there is a crossover there.
Well, I really like what you're proposing. I'm wondering if you might use it more explicitly, and kind of coming on what James said, really push ourselves, whether it's research or design spaces, to look at
struck by the example of the tablet, because that's so right in some ways, but also so wrong. And the bits that are missing are, well, this tablet is going to be spying on you, maybe reading your emails, maybe telling people where you're going and what you're doing. And that kind of social and cultural implication doesn't get thought about unless you're thinking more along the lines of dystopia.
So how do you decide? So I mean, you see all those people working there as those presses personnel, they go there all John, right? So you might say, we shouldn't do that. It's going to lose all these people these jobs. This is a bad idea. Don't invent that future. But then maybe it creates all these jobs. Great. Like that. So how do we as researchers, who are we to make that decision and we don't really have the data to cut?
No, I don't think that we do, but I think we can no longer structure our questions so narrowly. I think, in that kind of how the tablet look, you've got a really sort of nice example of, classic HCI, where people are thinking about ease of use, usability, ease of learning, and these kinds of issues. And I think, as computing technology pervades every single aspect of our, personal, emotional, and political and social lives, we can't afford to do that anymore. We need to be thinking, okay, so what are the implications of giving away these vast amounts of data when we're making these communication systems? And I think speculative reasoning just allows us to enlarge the vocabulary a bit,
Does that raise the questions?
We're going to, these questions I know are going to come back. So we're just going to go through the presentation for you, and then we'll come back and I'll plug in.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I will go one by one with the run initially stated as the questions were given to us. So for the first question, how do I describe speculative reasoning in design? So before I answered that, I actually looked up the dictionary to make sure what speculative reasoning means. So I actually used Oxford Dictionary, and it defines speculative as this: engaged in, expressing, or based on conjecture rather than knowledge. So here, what's important is that it involves conjecture. So I also looked up what conjecture means to make sure. So conjecture is an opinion or a conclusion formed on the basis of incomplete information. So here, what's important, the important notion is that it's based on incomplete information. And reasoning means the action of thinking about something in a logical and sensible way. So as a sum up, I think the speculative reasoning means that the action of making sense of something when we have incomplete information or no information to be grounded upon. Okay, so I think this tells us that it's actually the definition of speculative reasoning itself tells us, if you are designers, easily guess that why it's actually very important in design. So I listed up three very much related issues where speculative reasoning seems to be inevitable. The first one is that design aims for or deals with future, which cannot be experienced now. So as Ron and Mark already have talked about this issue, so we are basically dealing with unknown things, which is future. And also many problems designers deal with are wicked problems rather than tame problems. So there is no absolute answer or solution of what we are trying to deal with. And design lives with people. So even for evaluating currently available products or services, we cannot know every possible problem and cost, since we cannot control the situation where people experience and living with. Okay, so, and then I actually, these three issues are the kind of the, one of the most important issues that every designer is dealing with. And actually, we try to also utilize many different kinds of approaches to deal with those kind of difficult issues. So I try to lay them out in the line of the intensity, in terms of the level of intensity of how much future should be, or what future can be. So then the designers have with a full determination, proposed orientation of what the future is. Then the designers also try to describe that, the ways of describing narratively or feature-based way or conceptual prototyping, which is the left end of this line. And the right, opposite to right line of this right side of this line, when there are designers who try to minimize speculative reasoning, which mostly involve data-driven design, which actually we already have been seeing many trials in this end, especially when we have sensors available and many data available online and many mobile companies and like a company like Google who can easily get user data, and they try to interpret what data means to improve their next version of their product. So, but of course we also have many approaches in the middle where designers are utilizing such as enactment and experience prototyping. But for my part, I will actually talk about a little bit different side of this line, where we designers don't have full imagination or full vision of what the future should be. Actually, for the ones who have been here for the conference from the starting point till now, we have been talking about the Internet of Things and what that future should be with the Internet of Things and what are possibilities. We talked about that, but I also seen that a lot of troubles and frustrations of what exactly the future should be, especially for the people side rather than technological side. So when we don't have a clear future, which means that in a way we don't have even for the speculative reasoning, the designers seem to have an unclear idea of for what they should be reasoning about. So I like to, it comes to the next question, but I slightly changed this question since I'm talking about no reasoning, that is speculative reasoning. So I changed it to this. What are examples of no reasoning of shaping future in design practice? So that's the technique that we have developed, which is called discovery-driven prototyping a few years ago, actually, would be an interesting example for me to talk about this aspect. So with discovery-driven prototyping, we designers provide a prototype that is designed with no presumptions of what it should do, which means what the future should be, and aim to enable users themselves to discover new opportunities of what are possible with it for themselves in their own real life. I worked with my students and former students, Dae-sung Kim and Dae-sung Do, and also current PhD students who move for this work. So I will just simply quickly show you 3 examples of this discovery prototyping. One example, which we call Engengi, it's actually a sound mimicking word, Northumbria. So let me show you how it works. It has a very simple functionality. It has photo cells to be triggered by light, and it triggers the timer when it's in the right part, and then after timer, very simple. And the second example, well, probably you don't know what that is for. And the second example we call Wakkary, which is a wireless two-way communicator, and I'll show you how. Very simple. It sends a signal and vibrates. And the third one, we call it tone, which means bottle in English. It's basically recording sound. So let me show you. Push the button plays the sound over and over again until it's covered up again. So those three examples, we actually very carefully designed, but without reasoning about what those should be used for. And then we put that responsibility purely to users. And so we deployed them to family members for a week, and they came up with a lot of interesting ideas, specifically working only for themselves, not actually this can be mass produced for some of the commercially available product ideas. So for example, like this one, it's a 4-year-old child getting a punishment from her aunt. She gave this hanging, which is heavy enough to be held by the child for a while, so that she can actually get some punishment by holding this for that time, which is very interesting to see how it's used. And this one is easier to be effective. People use it for easily finding out, easily losing most and easily losing parts like control. And this one was interesting. Wife was putting the elderly to her husband while he was driving, so that when he gets asleep while driving, she can wake him up. So what I'm trying to say from this kind of approach is that actually it's definitely possible and very important for designers to vision what the future should be, and then create the future through our designs. And at the same time, it's also possible for us to distribute our responsibility of shaping future to users who themselves can also create and shape and produce new futures as well. So how we work together in an interesting way was another way we can think about it. And then coming to the third question about our contributions and speculative reasoning in design to HCI. And for this one, I used my diagram again. And I was thinking about then what are kind of the current examples that might be able to be lined up in this line of spectrum. And I was thinking that actually Apple, when it had Steve Jobs, I think that we might position much of it here when the person like CEO has a clear vision of what the future should be, and then driving the company to produce this kind of product for the world. And so in this way, when having this kind of side, the visions, I thought the visions determine to the future. And the other end, like Google, I thought that matches to this line of side. So to me, actually, the companies like Google, data determine the future. So I cannot say that which ones are better, but it's different ways of working along the line of this, the different intensity of speculative reasoning has a different impact to the future, and also different ways of approaching to shape the future. And for this part, that I tackled for my part, I couldn't pick up the representative one yet, but I think we are starting to see. And actually, one of my PhD students who is sitting there, who extended our work of discovery through prototyping and came up with a notion of non-finito products, and she presented at KAIST this year, which means that actually the prototype, like discovery-driven prototypes, actually those concepts can be product concepts as well, and we start to see some of those examples already, like the examples like IFTPT, and also some of the small features in the mobile apps or the social network services, like Poke feature in Facebook and so on, which doesn't define what those should be used for and in what ways they should be used for people. So So we are starting to see many of those examples coming out, and users themselves actually in the future will utilize those kinds of available products designed by us. So in different approaches like that, we can have different strategies of shaping future through design, and also different ways of understanding about the way of reasoning in our development of design. So that's what I wanted to end.
Thank you. And so while Danielle is getting set up, are there any questions for you? Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your speech. I'm a student from Seoul Nation University, and my question is, you said you were designing you and your students were designing the product carefully, but you are letting the users to decide what the purpose of the product, right? And my question is, what were your principles for designing those of your three products?
That's a very good question.
Okay. Oh, great. So yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, it wasn't easy to design such kind of prototypes for us. Actually, it took a lot of time for us to think about how to make the products that doesn't define what it should be used for, because designers are very much trained about reasoning about the thing how that should be used for in the future status. So, but the key thing was that actually that kind of creation process, the future creation process, is given to users. So when we are trying to design those kind of things, how we can enable that process effectively. That was the principle when we were trying to design those prototypes. So some of the examples was that we wanted to make it aesthetically pleasing first, because it should engage people to use that in a certain way in their context. And another very important thing is that it should be very simple and clear to figure out what the functionality that is embodied there. So for example, as you saw, all those things doesn't include more than one or two small features, and they shouldn't be like, the people should not give their cognitive load to figure out what to do with that, because they should quickly adapt to them to any kind of situation they wanted to use them in their own situations. So we don't want to force them to use in a certain way. So those are very important aspects. And another very important aspect was that we wanted to make that, so for example, like a tone, the people sometimes have the preconception about a certain kind of thing, like a sound recorder, for example. We have some picture of what a sound recorder looks like. So that was another kind of strategy we had. Not kind of try our best to disassociate that pre-type kind of form with what we're trying to design. So there are several strategies we use. And actually creating that kind of thing, probably I guess the table-on-table design strategies in a way related to what we try to do as well. That creation process was involving a lot of speculative reasoning, of course, because we don't have any ground to reason upon. So in that regard, actually, discovery-driven prototyping can be maximum speculative reasoning. But that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to go to Daniela, and again, we're ready for questions. What's everyone to say?
Great, thank you. So I'm kind of a last-minute panelist, very excited to be here, and hopefully I'll work through my talk pretty quickly. So first, sort of the high-level take on speculative reasoning is that it's a part of a larger process for me that sort of framing design as a mode of social inquiry. And what I want to do today is just point to a case study of what that process is about, and how it kind of begins with a moment to take seriously empiricism in the sense of sort of looking at how people engage with technology in the world to make sense of it for themselves, their communities, and how that in itself projects many various sorts of changes, from sort of the micro levels, device level fixing of how about things like collectives, to hacker spaces, even to modes of feminist hacking that my group has been working on. I'm coming from the University of Washington. So a second way, though, in which we do some of this work is through building these kind of tactile media and tactile and tactical media explorations. These are things that allow us to ask questions by sort of surfacing some of the different ways in which artists, craftsmen, and people who have some exposure to making in their lives start to formulate new ways of making meaning through material. And the last set, which I'll focus on today, is what I'm playfully calling these anti-apps. So this is actually going to draw into the themes we already discussed, the adapting of use we just talked about, and then the solutionism even more so. So I'm going to focus on one technology called Trace that I recently built with my group that looks at the kind of today's orientation towards a map, and really what we could ask today about the same technology if we saw it less as solutionist in more subtle terms and maybe more as a technological unfix. This is his term for thinking about not just unblack boxing the technology, but also kind of trying to understand how we can provoke questions about it through this unmasking. And so what we started with was a simple idea of taking GIS and engaging deeply with a body of theory that starts to unpack how we walk through our everyday landscapes. And what we started to do is work with this notion of wayfaring that Tim Ingold produces that's really focused on this itinerant mapping that's not just about getting somewhere, right, the destination-oriented travel, but about exploring and not necessarily improvising as we explore. So always surfacing a new trajectory and new map along the way. So the question is then, how could we design this with the same tools a way of guiding wandering rather than destination-oriented travel? So we came up with something that's called Trace. It's a mobile mapping application that generates walking routes based on digital sketches people create without a map, and they annotate. And then they can send those traces to others, so those walking routes become modes of communication. And if I can play this video, I can talk through it. So to begin with, on the drawing side, we see a simple drawing here, a shape is used to just describe a simple path that would then be able to be annotated along specific points on that path. So that annotation can take the form of digital media, form of text. And as those annotations accumulate, since they're oriented on a path, they become kind of narrativized in the sense of one is coming after the other and produces a kind of story. So afterwards, this is then sent to a friend, a loved one, maybe someone that you do not know. And the idea is that as the digital sketch is produced, it can be anywhere that person picks it up. So they first choose how much time they want to walk, note that it's not the distance in this case, and then follow the path that the trace is providing. So the idea is, again, that we don't know where we're going to be oriented along this path, but then as it unfolds, so does this final message, right? That could take the form of 20 city blocks or 3. So the resolution is also quite interesting in how it's shaping that use. So again, just walking through, this is a simple orientation towards sketching, annotation, and sending, which we're very used to in the HCIK context. And on the other side, thinking about just selecting the amount of time walking. And this is not something that we looked at in very different kinds of cities in the United States. So we recruited 16 folks in pairs and dyads across Chicago and Seattle and Boston. And if anyone has visited these cities, you already know that the topography is quite different, the density of the cities are different, the makeup, right, of those cities is different. So a lot of the questions that came out of this were about thinking how these walks themselves began to transform for the people using them, using the trace. So first, engaging walks as creative events, people not just enjoyed looking at the walking routes themselves at the end, but sort of showing off the quality of their drawing skills. So this actually ended up coming out with a number of people who drew the two-masted sailboat a number of times because that was the one thing they felt they could draw. But in other ways, it became a moment to spend time handcrafting something in a sense that the annotations and the drawing came together. What sort of speaks to some of the themes that we already talked to is this orientation that people felt towards going somewhere quickly and doing it for a purpose that they had already come up with in the first moments of using the application. So the fact that, as this one person said, it feels unnatural to walk the same path. Usually people only walk down the same path if they're making a mistake. This is almost an obvious statement to us now today, thinking that mistakes happen when you reverse and turn back. But when did this occur, and how is it that we've become sort of resistant, right, to this notion of revisiting and rewalking? So that's something a little unexpected that algorithm might pull up in service for this person. And a more central piece, though, that I think it becomes actually about where we're taking the project now is noticing how walking is really about community building. It's about participating in the space and about feeling that one has rights to participate in that space. And as this person said, it made me think about how I take for granted that the sidewalks belong to me as anyone else, that wherever we are, that we have the right to be there and that I belong there as much as anyone. And so these notions of belonging and space in itself as represented by a map, it becomes something to be taken up and owned is quite interesting, I think. So as kind of moving forward to where this speculative reasoning might be headed, we think maybe that this notion of improvising while using something as pre-described and pre-specified as an algorithm is now something we can challenge through the technology itself. And how could we ask people to interact with the tool in ways that begins to point to other modes and challenges for doing this work. But I also think that we could actually pull together this notion of algorithms with wayfaring to see how this idea of a wayfarer that might be in control of certain aspects and let the environment and the social cues shape those is something central in all of our work, whether it be walking or using the tool. And lastly, I think pretty important is this notion of discrimination by design, that in the tool itself, as we're reinforcing some of the ways in which boundaries happen on maps, we're actually making those decisions for our users, right? So a lot of what we found while using this is how people come to feel and show off discriminatory behaviors through their choices to follow or not follow or contest what they see on the map. So with that, I want to end with this idea of social inquiry that design helps bring forth. And one important feature of this is that, again, it's projecting to a future, right? So why is this different then from other forms of research that we can see at KAI? Why is this producing different kinds of knowledge? Well, I think first, as we're using these speculative constraints and possibilities, we're also producing interjections into lived experience. And so as part of this, we're researching the now, we're also actually pointing to the future and the possible. And this is now the further thinking that Tony Dunn and Joan Raby have described. So that's distinct in the sense that the rich, big description that we might perceive for a project like this sound goal that's well scratching the surface and here kind of notion that's different from our everyday, and that we can understand those environments differently. The other thing is that it is really oriented towards trends, and that this is something that's now instead aims to answer questions specific to how social circumstances might change, right? So it's not about the what, how much, but more about the why and the how circumstances could be different. So thanks again for continuing this discussion. I'm excited to hear the panel come together very soon.
Thank you, Danielle. A question interpreted in yellow while Bill gets up. Yes.
What do you got with the anti-app tonight? I mean, I like your app. It's a cool app. So what's an anti-app and why is it common?
Yeah, so it's meant to serve as what I was describing as this technological unfix, to sort of think about what's underneath the surface of some of these tools. So, and I mean that in a couple ways. One way is that walking itself has been, as we just described, this kind of quantified self-movement is pointing us towards more and more kind of ways to account for how much we have walked. So that question of kind of give me a specific orientation for why I'm going to do something. And in this case, we're exploring the social aspects of walking, right? So we're looking at it quite differently. So there's not going to be that same space to orient towards a gamified app.
Really anti-app, was it more anti-efficiency in the goal of walking?
Yeah, I think that would be broader than efficiency. Yeah.
How to get there was this walk that has this emotional feel, or how to get lost.
Yeah, it's more insight-specific app, right? That it's kind of always worked towards a difference from the app that exists today.
But it's really about, so it's not an app per se.
No.
That you have
It's a reversal.
Value that is how apps are oriented rather than
Yeah. In that case, right? But yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's a really pleasure to be part of this panel. So just jump into it. So, all right. So in terms of speculative reasoning and design, so what is it? What does it offer? How do we think about it? So the way that I see it is that it's a mechanism to articulate ideas about how things could be. It's sort of a common theme that's going on. But also one thing that we should kind of keep in mind is it's also a mechanism to provoke and explore fears and desires that might be in possible futures that we could be bringing into existence. Also, when thinking about technology, it's a mechanism to explore what it might amplify, what it might inhibit in terms of how we think about humans and how the role technology plays in acting in the world. And I think it's also just a way to better understand our world. So it's about constructing and exploring speculative stories about what could exist. And so this is a good kind of jumping off point to some of the more generative work I've been doing. So I just kind of want to talk about it more as like a higher level, actually, and just giving an overview of how some of these stories may crafted through things, and I've been kind of like thinking about moving among those stories and engaging people in dialogue. And by people, I mean people in their everyday lives, but I think that also speculative reasoning and design has an important role to play in engaging academics in intellectual exchanges too. For the past several years, I've been focusing my efforts on the kind of implications, consequences, and benefits of the increased presence of technology in our lives. The fact that we're having this kind of always on and available nature, 24/7 culture, which opens up some really interesting and great things, like the fact that we can capture and share our life experiences. We all know these experiences, and we really value them. At the same time, we're looking at this world where the nature of our things are shifting. I have these hybrid artifacts that are both kind of digital and physical. Maybe the things that we have that were traditionally what we might call material are becoming increasingly digital or manifested through hybrid digital physical objects. And so how does that affect our everyday experiences and our encounters? And really when thinking about these ideas, one role that I think speculative design is really good at is, well, how might they unfold over longer periods of time? How might they manifest in our lives? And so one project that I've been working on with Microsoft Research for quite a while now, actually, is the Technology Heirlooms project. So this is kind of an ongoing thread in their research too. And so really, it's just this idea of pushing us to embody some particular stances or particular ways of approaching design within material things. And so I'm actually not going to kind of get into the specifics of what these do, but the idea of this like suite of artifacts is that maybe these could be kinds of technologies or representation of things that persist within our lives over a longer time period. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. So it's always about kind of also exposing where possible tensions might lie. And so really what this is about is just kind of having things that have a story to go with them. And so that story can evolve around the making of the thing and what it represents, and kind of this fact that it's kind of pushing us to design technologies that might embody our kind of digital residue beyond our own lifetimes. But it's also about how that story kind of intersects with people's lives too, and how that kind of is taken up and where that narrative continues. And so in a lot of the efforts I've been pushing forward is kind of looking at design artifacts as a site of inquiry, but also including it within people's everyday lives to continue on that narrative and see where it goes and see what could possibly fit all point maybe to come out of it. And so in the context of this project, it's really about well, what would it even look like to create something that might be able to persist long enough as a material heirloom, or would we even want to do that? Another project that I won't talk about too much here, but just to mention, also is this photo box project, which is looking at really this lens of slowness and what might that mean if embodied within a computational thing. And so the main point that I want to hit on here is that it's about speculating on a radically different alternative of what technology could be and what human relations to technology could be. And so this computational artifact really is something that only occasionally prints out one of your photos. It has no interface. The owner has no control over it. So, you know, even though these are kind of like quite contrasting notions to what contemporary consumer devices tend to offer, and are kind of quite parallel or quite opposite, the idea here was really to explore what would happen if we were forced to materially articulate this idea of slowness, this design theoretical idea within a computational thing. And so again, here the artifact becomes a site of inquiry, just as how it's lived experience, its existence within people's lives too. And so it's really about exploring again kind of possibilities might open up, and also the things that might obscure in people's lives, and how that continuing narrative interplays with the actual thing itself. And I think that that's one important way that speculative reasoning can really work to uncover new ideas, is that kind of dialogue of its material existence with its making. So both of those projects really dealt with physically instantiated, polished things that worked, and really kind of a key part of it is the fact that they were real and functioning in people's lives and had this kind of material existence. But for the last part of this presentation, I actually want to talk about a different approach called user enactments, which really aims to engage people in experiencing various different potential futures kind of in a much more rapid fashion. And really in all of these cases, dystopian futures that we don't really think we want to bring into existence, but provide a critical attention to have more discussions about, well, why is that the case? And so when doing user enactments, the data science and the research team will prototype multiple simulated representations of potential technological futures. And so then we bring people in to the setting where they are asked to enact loosely scripted scenarios that involve what might be kind of a familiar situation, where a new and unfamiliar technical system is going to intervene in some way. And so the key points here is that these design concepts become kind of the mechanisms to explore these scenarios. They happen serially, and people are kind of exposed to 4 or 5 rather quickly. And really the aim here is to push people beyond their comfort zone, to speculate on what possible fears and intentions might be in possible futures that we can bring into existence. Really as a way of thinking about, well, where might social boundaries exist in spaces that we have little understanding of. And so just 2 quick examples from this project. So previously I've been doing some field work with teenagers just in their bedrooms, kind of getting a sense for how they're using technology and appropriating and how really just the role of technology in teen life. And so starting to kind of see some interesting things. So there's the kind of desire to amplify the presence of digital stuff in their lives, especially this kind of voice is always on kind of Facebook culture, just to kind of monitor what's going on in their social lives, and also to an extent drawing on their digital stuff as a way of reflecting on their past and really in quite like concerted detail, manipulating their different presentations of self to different audiences all at the same time. So these are kind of interesting things, but the question that was often coming up for me is, well, where does this point us to? With an HCI research, which is often very kind of directive and looking for design action immediately. And kind of when thinking about these things, like amplifying the presence of technology in teens' lives, it's really cool. What kind of future are they interested in bringing about? And should we really kind of try to challenge that or kind of critically inquire into it in a way of thinking about it with them in dialogue? So we prototyped this teen bedroom that was kind of the backdrop of these speculative explorations. So it just kind of involved looking through various different past images, getting a sense of kind of the aesthetic of teen life in their bedrooms. Sketching out over 100 different, not just design concepts, but these kind of social scenarios in which kind of technology was interjecting, and also just kind of prototyping the bedroom itself. So really the idea was to create this place where teens might just temporarily suspend belief of kind of this mix of low and high fidelity materials, and then kind of explore these different enacted scenarios really quickly. So just to give you a really quick glimpse at what 2 of them are. One was the auto-redecorated bedroom. So this was one where a teen comes home and is voiced with the task of finishing reading this last chapter of Romeo and Juliet before her friend comes over to study for an exam later that night. So she's reading away, and in the background, she has this whole array of personal content that's kind of tailored to her, the system that's done. And then when her friend shows up, the screen is changed automatically, and it's kind of this like creepy, curated collection of all these different exchanges and things that happen between them. And so there's like even some things that are kind of risque on here. And her friend that enters the room, she's played by another researcher, and engages in this kind of improvised dialogue about what's occurring here on the screens. And then momentarily Dad shows up and knocks on the door. And at this point in time, the screens automatically change to something that's much more family-friendly, you could say. And so then Dad comes in and eventually drops off the laundry, and it actually comes to a close. So really the point here was actually just probing on the acceptability of this idea of this curated, constantly evolving sense of self and converging the boundaries of physical and digital identities, with no intention of really building this out, but as a way of kind of engaging in a dialogue about, like, well, is this a kind of future that teens might desire? Really quick, the last one was this idea of the postcards from the past, so having a system that just generates these postcards based on your social network or media experiences over the past several years, and then you receive them in the mail a few years later, and they have these kind of summaries of things that happened to you. They're not always good, but it's also these rote collection again, the idea here was just to see, to have teens confront the material reality of receiving this information from the past, to open this discussion about a future where there's an unseen record keeping is happening, it's unknown self-disclosure, kind of amplified. So again, the aim here was just not to actually build these things up with communication, this kind of critical discussion in a speculative way. So just as a closing point, so what is speculative reasoning and design for HCI, and what does it offer? So a few ideas. Well, one is that it can catalyze critical debates about what could exist. And so this can happen in important ways among researchers and people, but also importantly among the HCI academic community itself. It can support the crafting and design of artifacts themselves in the form of theoretical articulation and intellectual argumentation, which is something that we don't do enough of. And then the last point is that it can expand research contributions in design beyond design. So it's the idea that this kind of work still can produce meaningful takeaways for design practice, but when you don't have that as a requirement from the starting point, it can also reveal other kinds of insights and produce other kinds of engagements that might get more of the social, political, or even like ethical issues that are bound to creating technology and bringing it into existence. And maybe that's something that we need now in HCI more than ever. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Will, are there any questions for Will? No? Okay, thank you, Will. And I'm just So this video that, as I mentioned in the talk, was sent to us by Haakon this morning. He was somewhere over, I think, the Pacific. And it's a short 5-minute video, his contribution to speculative.
Hello, I just wanted to share a few thoughts about speculative reasoning and design and why it's very important for the future of HCI research. And I just have a few quick points. I think really design has become one of the central ways in which research happens in HCI, primarily in two ways. One through a process of defining or identifying opportunities that should be designed or improved, and another form giving of giving shape to what possible futures could be and evaluating those design solutions to make sure they resonate with the needs that are being addressed. Okay, so we can think about research at HCI as falling onto these two axes. At the top, theoretical, and at the bottom, empirical. On the left, scientific, and on the right, practice-based. Taking a kind of naive view, you could say that on the left we have basic research, and on the right we have applied research. And here are some examples of how those fit onto the theoretical and empirical spectrum. So at the bottom left, we have laboratory studies that are empirically trying to study the world. And in the top right, we have a field like art history, which is sort of theoretically reconstructing the past based on evidence of practice that has happened. So knowledge at the top is really derived from prior knowledge, and knowledge at the bottom is based in present experience, the empirical. And typically when we talk about design research, we think about a split something like this. There's scientific research might be on the left, and design research is sort of kind of practice-based research, something derived through the practice of being a designer. Deductive reasoning is the process of determining what must be so based on the theoretical, right? And that's one of the cornerstones of scientific research. And inductive reasoning is the basis of what is so by observing the physical world and seeing how it operates. Design research is somewhat different. I think design research is really centered predominantly on speculative reasoning, on what might be so about the possible future. And that hypothesizing is really where the prior knowledge comes from to a certain degree, because of course we have to be conscious of the world to be able to experience it or use anything from it. And of course designers are creating new things for present experience to react to. And that's the role of kind of technological innovation in society. I make a further point here, and that's just to recognize that this is a really artificial split between science and design. I think a more reasonable way to look at this might be to say that, of course, all research is practice-based, because you're practicing research, or you're practicing science. So scientific research in this context is really a subset of all of the various kinds of speculative reasoning and design research. that could be happening.
So thank you, Haakon. So that concludes the panelists' presentations, and now I'd like to open it up to the floor, or if not, I have some questions for our panelists. So are there any questions from the floor, or even questions amongst panelists? No, I guess that's my job. You have a question? Okay, you might go.
Okay, Youn, I have a question. So I really loved the discovery of prototypes, but I just was curious. I kind of want to push back on the idea of no reasoning, because I mean it almost occurred to me more like less in the abstract, but when as you're presenting and seeing these images, and especially the ones of the people with the seatbelt, and all, it's like really compelling, and it almost seems as though it's this kind of speculative vision or like argument about the need for technology that's like simple enough to be repurposed or resourcefully drawn on in life, everyday life in general. And it's like the seductive nature of each of your designs too, the qualities of it really I think like brought that out for me. So I was just curious if you feel that.
Actually, when I was putting no reasoning there, I was also a little bit struggling whether it's right to put no reasoning there or not. But the reason that I put no reasoning was that the discovery-driven try not to define any specific future from designer's side. And so in usual, when we do the reasoning activity in design, we try to figure out what possible future can be and try to create that through many different kind of approaches that can inspire us to imagine about future, and also we can also when we have a vision about what the future should be, we use the materials or other kind of tools and approaches to help us to actually manifest that idea clearly. And then when thinking about the traditional ways of doing the design activity in that regard, when I was thinking about discovery-driven prototyping, the process of that process seems to be trying to create a future. In terms of trying to create a future, it's very different because we try not to assume any future by ourselves. We try to create a discovery-driven prototypes, and so if that is the purpose, and then if I try to say, so I mentioned that in certain sense actually we use the maximum speculative reasoning because we don't have anything to draw upon, because we don't try not to imagine the future by the designer's side. So because that's the purpose we had, if reasoning is based on that, we use the maximum speculative reasoning. But when we think about the imagine the future, we actually have no reasoning for what future should be. So that's why we use the term no reasoning. But interestingly, we realized that the people actually probably had an experience of speculative reasoning, the users who had that perhaps in their context. So to us, actually, that was an interesting thing because that kind of meaning-making process, in a way, encouraged by the way that we try for people. So in that regard, actually, all of us talk about, in a way, it's aligned with that line, I think. So I was thinking that the anti-app, the trace Daniela talked about was interesting as well, because the people actually, it's not about solving their some kind of problems and practical problems they have, but they try to create some new meanings out of using that and reflect upon kind of new experience that might be given through the kind of applications. So kind of creating that kind of
apps, the process of creating the apps might be aligned with the process of creating discovery through prototype.
I have a question for each of the panelists, and I think I actually may pick up a point that James raised at the very beginning in response to Mark. I mean, it's a question about judgment. And that within, when we're talking about speculative reasoning, in fact, maybe one of the things you can see is an opposition to, say, user-centered design. It's an opposite, in fact, none of what we talk about really has these sort of stakeholders or users in which they actually, that centralization judgment comes to certain users, etc. So where does judgment fit in this? How do you decide whether we should go ahead with speculating about this particular thing, or what things you should speculate on or not? So I'm just curious how you want to get comment on that.
I think that's a really important question in this kind of stuff. I'm not sure that your things don't have users, because I think it's that your table, your Facebook box will have a cat, say that, and also your table and table had a cat. So is that a conservative design for cats? Well, I think the judgment aspect of this is crucial, really. And I think when you're asking questions about what you actually make and what you deploy, it's very important to be clear about what your research question is with this kind of work. And so with the imaginary abstracts that we wrote, one of them was, I worked with a PhD student who was working on techno-spirituality, trying to do designs which support spiritual practices. And we thought it might be kind of funny to do an eBay roulette system. And we were thinking about, you know that bit in the Bible where a rich man goes up to Jesus and says, how shall I follow you? And he says, give away all your stuff. And the guy just goes away sad. We thought we could support that very difficult injunction with an eBay roulette system. And we were also thinking about Buddhists, you know, we need to turn away from all the samsara and surfaces and distractions. So we thought, what if there was an eBay roulette system where you would enter into a database all of your possessions, and it would choose one of them, sell it on eBay for the most it could, and give the money to charity. And we kind of thought that was kind of a nice idea, but really just a bit, you know the kind of critical design that makes 1 point and 1 point only. And so we thought, no, that's not actually going to particularly answer any research question. And so when we were writing up the imaginary abstract, it was something we found offensive and trivializing evolution. We thought one person might like it, because, maybe that's not beyond the realm of possibility there. But I think in terms of judgment, I think there's that, well, what's the research question we're trying to answer aspect to it? But there's also a question, I think, of interpretation of this kind of work, because I think sometimes a speculative design or a critical design needs to be engaged with and interpreted in inventive ways. And that's something that we're not very good at talking about in HCIK, evaluate something as a success or a fail, because people like it or people don't. And I think there's another aspect to it, which is more interpretive.
Yeah, I was actually going to go in a similar direction, thinking about it though and instead of the sort of user-centered design, maybe spectrum, thinking about sort of the development of the idea and how that development happens. Obviously, there's judgment as part of making decisions as to what is and is not appropriate and ethical and all these various things. And that's something that you could do based on empirical work, right? You could be going out to the field as you might do in a user-centered design project. You might do it based on theoretical work, based on responding to technology, based on your experience prior to this, doing other kinds of practices. So it's interesting to think about all the various influences that come into that judgment, but then also on the interpretation end, I think there's a tendency to think about interpreting the object from the designer's perspective in a design research kind of moment, and that's maybe different if we start to, again, use other people's lived experiences to start understanding the object, right? So to understand how this deployment might allow us to do some kind of other interpretation of what that object does. And then, so the interpretive work is on those two ends, and
probably question as well. So one of the biggest challenges as a design researcher around this kind of idea, the speculative reasoning, in this HCI community, is that because speculative reasoning in a way forces us not to be empirically, reasoning about the discoveries that we are trying to get through our research. And so how then the quality of speculative reasoning can be judged or assessed and evaluated would be an interesting question for us to think about as a design researcher. And I don't have answer though, but we see some of the good examples coming out actually in HCI, but it would be an interesting question for us to have as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the responses, it kind of comes out of a community practice that has expertise and competencies, and I mean, that's like why we have these committees that are full of people that have been working in the practice of design and speculative design and research, and I think that really that's where judgment comes in. I mean, it's kind of like, it's almost like it's something that just speaks to you, and it kind of has an analytical framework that will tell us if it's great, a great job or not. I mean, it's kind of almost like, well, it's dependent on various factors. It's dependent on how the material composition of the whole comes together, how the thing itself operates in form of argumentation, and how it can resonate with people, perhaps, and how this whole element, these various elements come together into what we often judge the final research artifact, which is the paper. And it's not really kind of a clear way of just, assessing them in a completely formalized fashion.
Yeah, I think I'll just any questions. So I think we'll kind of bring this to a close, but I think the one thing that just actually kind of comes full circle, because we talked about these opening slides and going beyond the probable. And we talked about the probable. One of the key aspects of it was to what degree your featuring was predictive. And there was your measure right there. And as you cross it into the probable, we talked about the potential possible injury of victim. And now we're at a whole level of kind of interpretive judgment. And I think maybe that the question then is not only so much what can we, but how do you, if you talked about a larger community like KAI or HCI, how do you actually, without these external measures that go beyond consensus and, unless you reach a level of consensus that you're talking about, how do you act? And I think that's really kind of important question. So I want to thank all our panelists, and I want to thank all of you that stuck it out for being here. So one last round of applause.